Prior to the Civil War, women were subordinated within society and the government. Their responsibilities were to keep their home together and running it as it should be, and taking care of their children as well. The Civil War opened up opportunities for women to have different responsibilities that made them have more independent attitudes towards their roles in society. After the Civil War, the responsibilities of these women became less self-oriented, and they began to focus on their role as women in the human race. This desire for different roles in society transferred to the realization of the absent status of their rights as American citizens.
As the responsibilities of women in the household and in society changed, this caused a change in the opinions of women. They believed that as they began to take on more responsibilities during times of war and in the economic support of their families, that they should receive more rights as well. This led to the major campaigning for women's equality and involvement in politics.
The responsibilities of women began to change before the Civil War. Many women were involved in abolitionist movements, leading the campaign for black citizenship, which finally led to the interest in their own civil rights. As the Civil War broke out, women joined in on the war effort, not only at home, but on the battlefield as well. Although still a rarity, women worked as nurses and also tended to the general needs of the soldiers. Women proved to be very beneficial to the war effort.
One woman in particular, Mary Edwards Walker, proved to play an essential role in the war. She served as a war surgeon for the Union Army, having graduated from Syracuse Medical School. This was very uncommon for women at the time. During the war, she showed courage and selflessness when she crossed enemy lines to help a wounded civilian. She was accused of being a spy and captured by Confederate forces and taken to prison. When she was released, she was granted the Medal of Honor for her courage and heroic efforts. She was the first woman in history to do so. After the war, Mary Edwards Walker became an activist for the women's rights campaign. Mary graduated from college, became a surgeon, and became an asset to the Civil War effort, and earned a Medal of Honor. She achieved more than many men would achieve in their lifetimes, so why should Mary receive any less rights than the common man? To enforce her opinions, Mary began dressing like a man. She broke feminine stereotypes by dressing as men in an attempt to show that she should be treated equally. Mary Edwards Walker was trusted with large responsibilities during the Civil War, as many other women were at the time. Those women who weren't directly involved in the war effort were still left with all the responsibilities of the household, the family, and the economic support of their families as well. Their strength during the times of war showed their ability to handle large responsibilities. After proving they could handle such responsibilities, many women believed that they should receive more rights in return. This was where the emergence of women's rights campaign began. It was at this time that women had valid reasoning for wanting equal rights to men, and they were going to voice their opinions. Louisa May Alcott was also a nurse during the Civil War. She shared her experiences dealing with the wounded soldiers, which she called her boys, and the emotional and physical toll it took on her life, through letters and books that she wrote. She wrote many books about her times during the Civil War, but many people told her to write a book that would entertain young female readers. She then began working on her soon-to-be famous story of Little Women. Her book was written in the point of view of a woman during the times of the Civil War. Her characters showed women as strong individuals, showed the personal struggles of women at the time, and how the personal responsibilities of women interfered with personal growth. Louisa May Alcott was one out of many women who voiced their opinions about rights of women through literature. The spread of ideas on women's rights were a major catalyst of the campaigning for women's rights. This in turn brought out emerging activists that would lead the women's rights campaign.
One of these activists was Elizabeth Cady Stanton. As a young adult, Stanton was exposed to the world of reform through visits with her cousin, abolitionist Gerrit Smith, who lived in Peterborough, New York. In Peterborough, she met her future husband, Henry B. Stanton. They were married in May 1840 in a ceremony from which the promise to obey was omitted. Elizabeth had pro-women views established into her marriage. At the time, women were subordinate to their husbands and men in the general society. Omitting the promise to obey translated this anti-subordinate idea into her marriage. On her honeymoon, the Stantons traveled to London to attend the World Anti-Slavery Convention, where she met Lucretia Mott. Stanton was an educated woman and knew that a woman's responsibility to herself was to protect herself through education. Stanton stated in her Solitude of Self speech to Congress in 1892 that,
"To throw obstacle in the way of complete education is like putting out the eyes to deny the rights of property, like cutting off the hands."
Stanton believed that women should receive equal rights and the right to vote because men oppressed women from all sides, whether it was in the home or in the government. 8 years after Mott and Stanton met, their plans for a convention finally took place. On July 19th and 20th of 1848, people came to the Seneca Falls Convention. It was the first women's rights convention ever held in the United States. At the Seneca Falls Convention, Stanton orated the Declaration of Sentiments and the keynote speech. In the keynote speech, she said, "The right is ours. The question now is, how shall we get possession of what rightfully belongs to us?" For the first time, women publicly stated their right for equality with males. The Declaration of Sentiments was formatted based on topics stated in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal. The Seneca Falls Convention was the first step towards organizing and publicizing action for women's rights. To realize that previous views of God creating all men equal was true, but women are children of God as well and should receive the same rights as men have. The most influential event for women after the Civil War was the Seneca Falls Convention. After the Seneca Falls Convention, annual national conventions for women's rights were held in Worcester, Massachusetts from 1850 to 1860. Many reformers for women's rights believed that conventions were a forum for teaching the public about women's rights issues and recruited both women and men.
The women's rights movement began from a realization. After gaining many responsibilities at home and in society, especially during times of war, women realized that they were responsible, opinionated individuals who should have a say and be treated as equals. Whether they wanted to cast a ballot or simply not be seen as subordinates, women banded together to gain the rights that they deserved. As said by Elizabeth Cady Stanton, the strongest reason why we ask for women a voice in the government under which she lives, in the religion she is asked to believe, equality in social life, where she is a chief factor, a place in the trades and professions where she may earn her bread, is because of her birthright to self-sovereignty, because as an individual she must rely on herself. Women were individuals with large responsibilities and a lack of representation and opportunity that they needed not to voice their opinions, but to be heard. It was through campaigning and bravery that women were able to make a change and receive rights that would suit their responsibilities and their role in society.